for so long.
He was like a shadow pulling the strings.
Right, like the godfather of Osage County.
But White, he was determined.
He kept digging, kept pushing.
And his team uncovered something unbelievable.
This whole web of deceit, like a spider web.
A conspiracy that went deeper than anyone imagined.
Hale, he wasn't working alone.
He had a
Welcome back, everyone. We're diving into a really dark part of American history today.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
The Osage Reign of Terror.
It's a story that a lot of people don't know about.
Exactly. And we're going to be using David Grann's book, Killers of the Flower Moon.
Really brings it to life, that book.
It does. To try and get to the bottom of, well, a series of murders.
Targeted murders.
Yeah, that happened to the Osage Nation in the 1920s.
Really dark period.
And the Osage people, this is the crazy thing.
They were rich.
They were considered the wealthiest people in the world at that time.
Per capita.
Per capita.
Yeah.
And it was all thanks to the oil that was discovered on their land.
Like, imagine that. You're living on this land.
You're just living your life.
Yeah, and suddenly, boom, there's oil.
Black gold, Texas tea.
And not just a little bit. We're talking millions.
Millions and millions. Just to give you an idea.
Try to wrap your head around this.
In 1923, they earned something like $30 million.
In today's money.
From oil.
Over $400 million.
It's crazy.
Unbelievable.
Even back then, people were like, what is going on?
I mean, the whole world was watching.
There's this quote from a New York Weekly.
Yeah, I remember this one.
The Outlook, and it said, "Lo and behold, the Osage Indians are
Wait, let me guess.
enjoying a steady income that turns bankers green with envy."
Bankers green with envy. That's perfect.
But all this wealth, as you can imagine, made them a target.
Yeah, that's the sad part.
In a time and place where greed and racism were, just rampant.
It's a recipe for disaster.
So at the center of this really chilling story is a woman named Molly Burkhart.
She's a key figure in all of this.
An Osage woman whose life is just completely turned upside down.
It all started with her sister.
Her sister, Anna Brown,
Ganesh.
just disappears in May of 1921.
It's a mystery.
Anna, she liked to go out.
She was a social butterfly.
Yeah, have a good time.
But one night, she didn't show up.
At Molly's house, as she usually did.
And that's when the worry set in.
You can imagine, right? Your sister doesn't come home.
The fear must have been overwhelming.
And then, to make things even worse,
Even more suspicious.
just a week before Anna disappeared,
Another Osage.
named Charles Whitehorn also vanished.
Just gone.
So there was this feeling in the community.
Like something was terribly wrong.
Something bad was happening.
And they were right.
And then, the worst possible news.
They found Anna's body.
The ravine.
Can you imagine the heartbreak?
The desperation.
Molly must have felt completely lost.
And the investigation into Anna's murder was just a mess.
Full of inconsistencies.
Dead end.
Like the local authorities just weren't really trying.
It's like they wanted to sweep it under the rug.
And get this. They exhumed Anna's body.
They were looking for the bullet, hoping it would give them some answers.
And guess what?
What?
It was gone, missing.
Wow. A missing bullet?
What does that tell you?
Talk about cover-up.
Someone was trying to hide something.
It's like they were protecting someone.
Sending a message to the Osage people.
Like, don't ask questions.
Exactly. Stay silent.
It's heartbreaking to see this kind of injustice.
It's a pattern we see throughout history, unfortunately.
But let's talk about this guy, William Hale.
William Hale, the king of the Osage Hills.
What a character.
He was more than just rich.
He wanted control.
Power.
And he saw the Osage as obstacles to his ambitions.
They were in his way.
He was this rancher, right?
Went from a poor cowboy to one of the wealthiest men in Osage County.
He presented himself as a friend to the Osage.
A benefactor.
But Grann really paints a different picture.
There was a darkness to him.
A much darker side.
He had connections to some shady people.
And his rise to wealth was, well, let's just say it raised eyebrows.
It did. A lot of whispers.
And as we dig deeper, we're going to see how he used his influence,
His connections.
to manipulate things,
Control information.
deflect suspicion.
He was a master manipulator.
Now, Molly's family, they weren't just sitting around waiting for justice.
They took matters into their own hands.
They hired private detectives.
They knew they couldn't trust the local authorities.
They had a deep distrust of the system.
And for good reason.
They knew they had to find the truth themselves.
It was a matter of survival.
So remember how I mentioned the exhumation of Anna's body?
Yeah, the missing bullet.
That wasn't the only strange thing that happened.
More and more Osage people started dying.
Under suspicious circumstances.
One after another.
It was like a plague had descended on their community.
A reign of terror.
Exactly.
It was terrifying.
But here's the thing.
The Osage, they fought back.
They weren't just passive victims.
They demanded justice.
Accountability.
They knew the local authorities were corrupt.
Incompetent.
Or both.
So they turned to the federal government for help.
They needed someone from the outside.
And that's where J. Edgar Hoover comes in.
J. Edgar Hoover. Ambitious.
The new director of the Bureau of Investigation.
Which later became the FBI.
He saw this case as a chance to prove himself.
To show the world what the Bureau could do.
To make a name for himself.
He wanted to make a splash.
So he assigned Tom White, this seasoned Texas Ranger,
A tough guy.
to lead the investigation.
It was a high-profile case.
And Hoover knew it.
He wanted results.
White had his work cut out for him.
It was a dangerous assignment.
He had to assemble a team
Undercover agents.
to infiltrate Osage County.
To get to the truth.
And they did some crazy things.
It had to blend in.
They posed as cattlemen, insurance salesmen, even an Indian medicine man.
Can you imagine?
Talk about undercover work.
They were risking their lives.
They were surrounded by danger,
But they had a job to do.
and they were determined to do it.
No matter the cost.
And that's where we'll leave it for now.
We'll be back with part 2.
Where things get even more intense.
You won't want to miss it.
Stay tuned.
We'll be right back.
We're back, and let me tell you, things get even more intense.
Oh, yeah. Way more intense.
Like, imagine this. Molly's house explodes.
In the middle of the night.
It's terrifying.
I mean, someone was sending a message.
For sure. Stay silent or else.
It was a warning.
And it worked. People were terrified.
The pressure was on Tom White and his team.
To find whoever was behind it all.
Especially because Molly's brother-in-law, Bill Smith,
Was badly hurt in the blast.
as he was dying,
He managed to say one thing.
it was huge.
He named William Hale as his enemy.
That was a turning point.
It gave White a lead.
But Hale, he was a slippery character.
Powerful, too.
He had the sheriff, the prosecutor, even some judges on his side.
It's crazy how he managed to stay out of suspicion for so long.
He was like a shadow pulling the strings.
Right, like the godfather of Osage County.
But White, he was determined.
He kept digging, kept pushing.
And his team uncovered something unbelievable.
This whole web of deceit, like a spider web.
A conspiracy that went deeper than anyone imagined.
Hale, he wasn't working alone.
He had accomplices.
People helping him carry out these awful plans.
And this is where it gets even more messed up.
One of those accomplices
Was Ernest Burkhart.
Molly's own husband.
Can you believe that?
I mean, imagine the betrayal Molly must have felt.
Finding out the man you love, the man you trust,
Is involved in these horrific crimes.
against your own family.
It's heartbreaking.
Ernest, he was Hale's nephew.
Totally caught up in his uncle's schemes.
And White's team, they found out Ernest played a big part in a lot of those murders.
It's like a nightmare you can't wake up from.
Absolutely.
White, though, he was a meticulous investigator.
Putting all the pieces together like a puzzle.
Financial records, insurance policies, witness testimonies.
He wanted to understand how Hale operated.
And what he found was pure evil.
It was all about greed.
Hale was taking out life insurance policies on people
And then arranging for them to be murdered.
so he could collect the money. It's just sickening.
He saw the Osage wealth as his for the taking.
He exploited the racism of the time.
Knowing that the lives of the Osage people weren't valued the same way as white people's lives.
It wasn't just about money, though, was it?
No, Hale wanted control.
Power.
He saw the Osage as a threat to his own ambitions.
So he decided to eliminate them,
He was a predator, taking advantage of their trust, their vulnerabilities.
using alcohol, drugs to weaken them, make them easier to manipulate.
It was a calculated attack.
But building a case against Hale, even with all this evidence, was tough.
People were afraid to talk.
They were afraid of Hale, of what he might do to them.
And there was so much corruption.
Evidence disappeared.
Witnesses vanished.
But White didn't give up.
He kept pushing, kept the pressure on.
And finally he got a break.
One of Hale's men, John Ramsey, confessed.
He admitted to killing Henry Roan.
For Hale.
That was a huge win for White.
And then Ernest Burkhart, he turned on his uncle.
Testified against Hale.
Gave White the evidence he needed.
To finally charge Hale with murder.
It was a long time coming.
The trial was in
a media circus.
The whole world was watching.
Hale, with his fancy lawyers.
They tried everything to get him off.
But White had built a strong case.
He presented the evidence.
Exposed Hale's crimes.
And in the end, the jury found Hale guilty.
Of Henry Roan's murder.
Sentenced him to life in prison.
It was a victory.
For the Osage people.
For justice.
But it was a bittersweet victory.
Because there were so many other victims.
So many whose killers were never caught. Grant actually suggests that the official death toll, 24 people,
might be way too low.
He thinks it could be in the hundreds.
The true extent of this conspiracy might be even more horrifying.
It's a chilling thought.
It makes you wonder how much we don't know.
How many secrets are still buried in Osage County?
We'll dive into that and the aftermath of these horrific events when we come back.
Stay with us. Okay, so we're back. And, we've been through a lot with this story.
We have. It's heavy stuff.
But putting Hale away, it was a big win.
It was, for sure. A step towards justice.
But it doesn't erase everything.
No, definitely not. The pain, the suffering, it lingers.
Especially for the Osage people.
Their lives were forever changed by these events.
Grant talks about Molly Burkhart, after the trials.
Yeah, what happened to her?
She kind of, withdrew from everything.
Became a recluse.
Yeah, she just stayed in her home.
It's like the weight of it all just became too much.
The betrayal, the loss.
Imagine losing your sister, your mother, and then finding out your husband was involved.
It's unimaginable.
And the community, too. They suffered so much.
Their sense of security was shattered.
The trust they had in the system, gone.
And then there's Ernest. What happened to him?
After he testified against Hale?
Yeah, he went to prison, right?
He did. Served his time for his part in it all.
And then?
He went back to Osage County.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that.
But he was an outcast.
Nobody wanted anything to do with him?
The white community shunned him. And the Osage people, well, they couldn't forgive him.
He lived the rest of his life in isolation.
Haunted by his past.
In Hale. Did he ever admit to what he did?
No, not really. Even in prison, he was delusional.
He actually said he wanted to go back to Osage County.
Can you believe that?
He claimed he would always be their true friend.
It's astounding.
No remorse, no understanding of the pain he caused.
Just this arrogance, this belief that he was somehow above it all.
And this whole story, it's not just about the murders.
It's about a system that allowed this to happen.
The exploitation, the racism.
The way the Osage people were treated, their rights violated.
It's a part of our history that we need to confront.
To learn from.
And remember that the official death toll might just be the tip of the iceberg.
Right. Grann suggests it could be much higher.
That there were many more victims.
And that the conspiracy might have been even wider.
Involving more people, powerful people.
It's a chilling thought.
It makes you wonder, how much don't we know?
How many secrets are still out there?
And that's what we need to keep in mind.
You need to keep asking questions.
Keep searching for the truth.
And keep the memory of the victims alive.
So that's it for our deep dive into the Osage Reign of Terror.
A dark and heartbreaking chapter in American history.
But we hope this has sparked your curiosity.
Encouraged you to learn more.
Read Grann's book. Do your own research.
Engage in conversations about these issues.
Because understanding the past is crucial to creating a better future.
That's what these deep dives are all about.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
Until next time.
Thanks for listening to whttr, Who Has Time to Read, produced by One Media. Please support the author by purchasing the book or audiobook using the link in the description. It's a great way to help keep the art of writing alive. And stay in the loop. Subscribe to our newsletter for updates on weekly deep dives. And don't forget to share your thoughts or suggest our next deep dive at whttr.podcast@gmail.com.